Is the Nikon D500 relevant for bird and wildlife photography in 2023? The short answer is yes. The D500 is still a powerhouse even in a world of mirrorless cameras. It's rather unfortunate, rather unbelievable that Nikon have just done away with their range of entry level DSLR cameras and DSLR cameras like the D500, and they are forcing down these expensive mirrorless cameras down our throats. Now, if you're a beginner who just wants to test waters and see if bird and wildlife photography is something you will enjoy, you're really left with no alternative but to invest in an expensive camera. And so that's why, at a time like this, used camera gear such as this D500 will be very important to bridge this gap until mirrorless cameras become a lot more expensive, lot less expensive, and more accessible to the average person. Let's look at some of the specs of the D500 that are especially useful for bird and wildlife photography. So let's look at the number of autofocus points, the autofocus speed and accuracy, the frames per second, the buffer size, and the image quality. Now, before we go into that, you must know that the camera is really well built. It is solid, it's weather sealed, and can resist dust and light rain like a champion. If you read the specs of the D500, they'll tell you that this camera has 153 focus points and 99 of them are cross type. Cross type points focus faster and more accurately than linear focus points, especially in challenging fast action photography and in low light. However, what you must know is that if I have a bird perched on a branch or a bird flying in the sky or any tiger, any animal, any living creature, if the eyes of the creature are even slightly out of focus, then that picture is unusable. The nose, the beak might be in focus, or the ear of a tiger might be in focus, but if the eyes are even slightly out of focus, when you look at the picture, you'll think there's something wrong with it. To ensure that the eye of any creature is supremely sharp, we need to set our autofocus area to single point and then maneuver that one single point to the eye of the creature. So that way, the camera locks focus on the eye, and even if there are leaves and branches and twigs in the way, your subject will always be sharp. If you let the camera decide where the focus should be, there's a very high probability that it will focus on these twigs and leaves and branches, and your subject will be completely out of focus. So when we set the autofocus area to single point, now we no longer have 153 focus points to choose from. We have only 55 focus points, and only 35 of them are cross type. And unfortunately, the focus points that fall on the rule of thirds are not cross type points. The Nikon D500's biggest rival, the Canon 7D Mark II, has 65 focus points, all of them cross type. The camera is able to latch focus pretty quickly, but obviously that also depends on which lens you use. So if you're using a 200 to 500 or a 500 PF or any of the prime lenses, it's going to latch on to focus very quickly. The camera can do 10 frames per second, which is very important when it comes to photographing birds and wildlife. Now, here again, the specs will tell you that it has a buffer size of 200 raw images. I'm always clicking pictures in the burst mode, and I find that the camera slows down after 4 or 5 seconds. It's taking this time to transfer the images from the camera's buffer onto the memory card, that's onto the SD card. You should not have this problem when you use a fast XQD card. The image quality on the Nikon D500 is pretty special. It can do well at even at 1600 or 3200 ISO. You'll get a good enough picture quality for a double spread magazine print. However, if you're photographing fine art prints, you really don't want to pump that ISO more than 640. At 100 to 400, it's superb. 500, 640, yes, still pretty usable for a decent print. One of the advantages of using Nikon gear is that Nikon have two affordable 500mm lenses, the 200 to 500 and the 500 PF, whereas Canon, they have the 100 400 but nothing really affordable in the 500mm range. Now let's talk about some of the camera settings on the D500 that will help you to click super sharp pictures of birds and wildlife. I have a separate video on my channel and the link is in the description that goes through these steps in more detail. Right now, let's cover just the some of the basics so that you can get an idea whether or not you're doing the right thing. Focus point, as I mentioned, I select my focus point manually and adjust it. Make sure that the focus point is overlapping the eye of the creature so that the eye of the creature is always supremely sharp. A very important setting on the D500 and many other Nikon cameras, even the top of the line mirrorless cameras, is focus tracking with lock on. You'll find this in the autofocus menu of your camera. I set this to delayed all the way to the right. What happens here is once I select my focus point, overlap it with the bird, and I lock focus on the eye, the camera is able to hold focus for longer. That way, even if a twig or a leaf or another bird comes in the way, the focus does not shift and I'm able to latch onto that focus longer. So even if the head of the bird momentarily leaves my single focus point, I still have focus there. So the chances are if it's in or around that focus point, I'll still have it in super sharp focus. I set my autofocus mode to autofocus continuous. So what happens when I set it to continuous is as long as I keep the shutter release button half pressed, the camera continues to hunt for focus. So even if the bird comes a little towards me or goes a little further away from me, the camera is always tracking it and will try and keep it in focus for me at all times. If you look at the other video in the description, there are a lot more features and functions of the camera that I discuss. I highly recommend you go and have a look at it. If you want to master your camera, any camera, and master the art and science of bird and wildlife photography, the great news is that you can learn photography from me sitting anywhere in the world through live video calls. So we'll connect on a video call and I'll take you through the functions and features of your camera and how to go about setting it for birds and wildlife in different situations. Please have a look at my website www.kirishmenon.com. The link is also in the chat to find out more about the courses that I offer. I look forward to hearing from you soon.